Do you think the fundamental intrinsic motivation that we so describe, it's rather than being a thing or an object itself, the intrinsic motivation is something that you scrutinize. So the procedure of a scrutiny, the procedure and the nature of you asking questions, what is my intrinsic happiness? That in itself, it's a process where you're trying to understand yourself. And by trying to understand yourself, you are getting more clarity of who you are.
Yeah.
And I guess from there stems a lifelong pursuit of I mean, I guess it's more like a cliche, finding yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why I think transition from my experience from a 20-year-old Jet to now approaching 30 at the end of this year, I look at myself, 20 years old, I was just like, I want to go look, searching for my soul, trying to understand myself. And now I've been doing that for almost a decade. I realized that the process itself is the end. So there's nothing that you can say that's permanently, intrinsically, that makes anyone happy. I don't know if that's the case, but that certainly I feel is for me. It's just everything comes and goes.
Yeah.
Like I was absolutely obsessed with triathlon, running, cycling, swimming. Like my life was poured into it. And then I just fed up. Like I remember then I would train 2-3 hours a day. My annual plan for 2016, 2017, I trained 600 plus hours.
Wow.
And that's excluding some other stuff I've done. Like,
Wow.
yeah, it's 600 hours, 600. Yeah, I can show you the stats, but it's an obsessive thing. Like weekends basically dedicated to that. And I still have friends who do that. But to say like I've moved away, it's not something that gave me intrinsic happiness. Sure, it doesn't give me intrinsic happiness now, but at the time when I did it, it certainly did. But again, when you tie in the exterior focused motivations, sure, it made me look really good. It made me really, really fit. So I can't, extract the intrinsic and exterior focused motivations behind that. Is like, do you think it's something that can only coexist? It's always the elements of it. It's a spectrum thing, isn't it?
I agree. I think it's definitely a spectrum thing. I don't think I would very obsessed about going to have to find that absolute intrinsic motivation. I think my goal, or the process I'm trying to get myself in, is to slightly move away from this, like from the right end of the spectrum, which is very externally focused, slightly towards the middle, slightly towards the left side, which is more intrinsically valued. In sense, like if you're talking about finance, it's like a hedging strategy, right?
Yes, sure, yeah.
Right? So like if the external doesn't work, you always have this part to protect yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's basically coming back to why I come from more like appearance focused into more empathy focused. I think it's definitely despite it's definitely both external feedback related, because your partner give you that feedback. But in the spectrum of value, it's definitely addressing more from the intrinsic part rather than the external motivation part. So that's probably the journey I realized the most. Going back to the topic of like my struggle of getting used to the Western dating culture, specifically in the paying culture. Right now, obviously, like I'm more of a supportive person towards more like both contribution part, not in terms of definitely split the bill, but more like, you don't think about that much in terms of you have to pay 5 quid, I pay 5 quid, but more of, I'm happy to contribute this time. Maybe next time you can contribute. If you don't contribute next time, that's fine too. As long as like we both have this mind that we want to make our relationship better.
Yes.
That's the most, like, the thing that matters the most. Also, conversely, you can argue, oh, what if you are the person who have the idea all the time? Like, who have the idea of activities all the time, so you end up paying all the time? Not really, right? If the other person wants this relationship to work, really value you, that person will find their own way to contribute, right? It doesn't about like frequency or has to be equal, has to be fair. Because I literally have the discussion with my girlfriends from different culture, actually. I heard so many different opinions. For example, one girlfriend, more from like a British background, a British girlfriend, she would say, you know what, like, if that guy doesn't allow me to pay for the first date, I won't date him again. He doesn't approve the equality that I'm seeking for. The equality, if you really think we're both equal, I need to take care of the monetary responsibility of contributing to the bill. The other girlfriend, who's also very like grow up in international school, quite westernized, but from the Asian background, she would say, you know what, if the guy doesn't pay on the first date, I won't date him again because he doesn't have the gesture. He's not gentleman enough. It's very interesting because I guess I'm like mixed of these two ideas in my mind and always have the struggling power sometimes. And I need to like talk to people about it. I'm saying, I talk to my therapist about, okay, I actually see this as a love gesture. And how can I deal with it? And he gave me another perspective, say, why don't you see money as a way of control? I was like, oh, I never thought about that. That's why I was mentioning maybe my dad was also thinking money as a way of control.
It's a relationship every single person on this planet has to have with money. And if there are 7 billion people in this world, I'm sure there are 7 billion ways relationship that people have with money. And it's interesting because from your British friend, she probably see it as a form of a control that, you know, women have been subjugated to men for a very long time.
Correct.
And recently we now fortunately have more and more open society where people are willing to engage in many of these discussions. So if it's not a split bill, that in itself is a representation that you can read into further, as this person may not be as equal-minded as you are. But I think it's also on the guy's responsibility to I guess, again, comes back down to empathy side. If you're an empathetic person, you can pretty much deal with, not dealing with, but you can pretty much understand both perspectives. So if you're dealing with your British friend, you're able to understand, okay, the reason why we're splitting the bill is not because you're disrespecting me, rather you want to gain your own independence, and this is a very important gesture that you must take in your personal journey, and vice versa. If I have to pay for the first meal because this is a gentlemanly act in a culture that corresponds to your, you know, upbringing, sure, I'm happy to do that. And I think it really goes both ways, which is to, as much as, let's say, I'm now from a selfish guy perspective, as much as I'm happy to entertain and accommodate both scenarios, I would expect the other side to do the same for me. And this is where you come back to the core central focus point, which is, are we in this together to move to the same direction? Because like you say, it makes life so much easier if someone's on your wavelength. You don't care. Like, I don't care how much I spend for my girlfriend because I know she's, you know, she's not doing it, you know, for any other, you know, sinister reasons. But I know she cares about how much I spend. She cares about how much I spend for her, and I care about, you know, likewise for her. So it's that mutual understanding that allows us to, for example, have a very, very clear understanding of, I guess this is what I would say about a high resolution in a relationship, that what is our relationship? What is her relationship to money? And what is my relationship to money? So I guess this is where we can probably summarize that as a topic where it's not about, for me, I don't think it's not about whether the guy pays or the girl pays. Insofar as cultural differences, it's really about how every person on a macro level, what is their relationship with money, and subsequently does that transpire over to the cultural differences that we have. And maybe I don't know, what do you think?
I think it's a very individual thing. It's definitely to do with like how you interpret your relationship with money, and fundamentally, if you are in it together, you can contribute in various different ways. It can be in monetary terms, it can be in action. As long as you both feel great about it. Yeah. That is the most important thing. And there's no standard answer to that. For example, like in the sense that my British girlfriend would not date the guy, well, I'll probably say would not date, but might not date the guy that my Asian girlfriend date. Simply because they are not have the similar understanding in terms of.
I guess it's not even about the guy they're dating, it's the scenario that's been played out.
Correct.
If this person, because I think one might see it as a hostile reaction, whereas the other one is seen as a friendly gesture.
Yeah. When I say it's not about guy or girl, or what I'm saying is two different people in two different relationships.
Yeah, for sure.
That's my focus.